The alarm screamed through the bridge of the UES Inchin as Commander Deho stared at the readings on his screen. 3 years into humanity's first deep space patrol mission, they had never received anything like this. The signal was weak, distorted by distance and desperation, but it was definitely alien in origin. "Captain Minsu to the bridge," Deho called over the ship's communication system. Within minutes, the captain arrived, still adjusting his uniform from sleep. "What do we have?" Minsu asked, taking his position at the command chair. "Unknown." "Transmission, sir?" "It's on multiple frequencies, broadcasting in what appears to be a mathematical sequence. Our computers are working on translation now." Deho pulled up the signal analysis on the main screen. The bridge fell silent as strange sounds filled the air. Even without translation, the desperation was clear. The voice was high-pitched, almost musical, but there was terror in every note. Dr. Hyjin arrived moments later, her dark hair still messy from being woken up. As the ship's xenobiologist, she had been dreaming of this moment since joining the crew. First contact with alien life. She just never imagined it would sound so frightened. "The translation matrix is online," reported Lieutenant Tae-young from the communication station. "Beginning playback now." The alien voice became clear, speaking in accented but understandable English. "This is Veltar of the Velthian Republic. We send this message to any who can hear. Our world dies. The Ravagers have come. 17 systems have fallen. We are the 18th. If any civilization receives this, please ... we need help. We have tried everything. Our weapons do nothing. Our shields fail. They adapt to everything we throw at them. This may be our final transmission." The message repeated, growing weaker each time as if the transmitter was failing or being destroyed. "Captain." Minsu looked around his bridge crew. Humans had only been in space for a few decades. They had faster-than-light travel, but their technology was still primitive compared to what they imagined other species might have. Yet here was someone begging for help. "How far away is this transmission coming from?" Minsu asked. "Best estimate is the Kepler 442 system, sir. About 1,200 light-years from Earth. The signal delay suggests this happened months ago." Deho checked his calculations twice. "Months ago," Minsu repeated. "They might already be dead." Dr. Hyjin stepped forward. "Sir, we have to try. This is first contact. Even if we arrive too late, we might learn something important." Sergeant Jae-wook, the ship's Marine Detachment leader, spoke up from his position near the back of the bridge. "Captain, with respect, what could we possibly do that an advanced alien civilization couldn't? If their weapons don't work, what chance do we have?" It was a fair question. The UES Inchin was a patrol ship, not a battleship. They had standard Earth Defense Corps weapons, railguns, missile systems, and basic energy shields. Nothing that seemed impressive compared to what these aliens probably had. "We won't know until we get there," Minsu decided. "Navigation? Plot? Our course for Kepler 442, maximum speed. The jump to faster than light took 6 hours to prepare." During that time, the crew analyzed every second of the alien transmission. Dr. Hyjin worked with the linguistics computer to understand more about Velthian language patterns. What they learned was disturbing. The Velthians seemed to be herbivores based on their vocal structure and the few glimpses of their biology in the transmission. They spoke about war like it was something they had read about in books, not something they had experience with. Their weapons were described in terms that suggested they had never fought anything more dangerous than space pirates. They're talking about honorable engagement protocols and minimizing civilian casualties. Dr. Hyjin reported to the senior staff meeting. "These people fight like war is a sport with rules." Sergeant Jae-wook shook his head. "That's going to get them killed. You don't negotiate with something called Ravagers." When the Inchin dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, they found chaos. Long-range sensors picked up debris fields where space stations used to be. Entire planets showed signs of massive environmental damage. And there, around the third planet, was a battle in progress. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Tae-young. Look at the size of that fleet. The Velthian ships were beautiful, elegant curves of white and silver that looked more like artwork than warships. They fired beams of pure energy that lit up space like fireworks. Their formations were perfect, their tactics textbook examples of space combat. They were losing badly, the enemy ships were different. They looked grown rather than built, all organic curves and dark surfaces that seemed to absorb light. Where Velthian ships moved in formation, the Ravager ships swarmed like insects. They took damage that should have destroyed them and kept fighting. Worse, every time the Velthians used a weapon, the next wave of Ravager ships seemed less effective. Buy it. They're adapting, Dr. Hyjin said in amazement. Look at the sensor readings. Each time the Velthians fire their energy weapons, the Ravager ships develop better resistance to that frequency. Captain Minsu studied the battle. Communications, try to reach the Velthian fleet. Let them know we're here to help. It took several attempts to establish contact. When they finally got through, the alien face that appeared on screen was unlike anything they had imagined. Veltar was tall and thin, with large eyes and blue-tinted skin. Beautiful in an alien way, but clearly exhausted and terrified. "Who are you?" Veltar asked. "Your ship ... It's so small. Are you refugees from another fallen system?" "I'm Captain Minsu of the Earth Defense Corps ship Inshin. We received your distress call. We're here to help." Veltar's expression went through several changes. Confusion, hope, then something like disappointment. "Earth, we've never heard of your system. How advanced is your civilization? What weapons do you have?" "We're relatively new to space travel," Minsu admitted. "But we have experience with war." "New to space?" Veltar's voice rose. "You're primitives. What could you possibly do?" "We have energy shields, plasma cannons, antimatter drives." The Galactic Defense Network couldn't stop the Ravagers. What can one small ship from a backwater world accomplish? Sergeant Jaewook stepped into view of the communication screen. His scarred face and cold eyes made Veltar step back. "With respect, sir, how long have you been fighting?" 47 days, Veltar replied. "And how many enemy ships have you actually destroyed?" Veltar hesitated. "We have damaged several. Forced others to retreat for repairs." Jaewook nodded. "We've been watching your battle for the last 10 minutes. You're not trying to kill them, you're trying to win politely. We follow the galactic warfare conventions. We don't target civilian vessels. We allow damaged ships to withdraw. You're losing," Dr. Hyjin interrupted gently. "If you keep fighting this way, your people will be extinct in a matter of days." Veltar looked at the small human ship on his sensors, then at the massive Ravager fleet that was slowly overwhelming his defenses. His people were dying while following rules that their enemies ignored. Maybe, just maybe, these primitive aliens had something to offer. "What do you suggest?" he asked finally. Captain Minsu smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "We show you how humans fight." Lieutenant Tae-young guided his small scout ship through the debris field, following the Velthian escort vessel toward their orbital defense platform. The alien ship moved carefully around each piece of wreckage, treating the destroyed stations like sacred burial grounds. "They're slowing us down," muttered Corporal Bio-Ra from the gunner's seat. "At this rate, the enemy will be here before we finish looking around." Through the communication channel, the Velthian pilot's voice was apologetic. "Forgive our pace, human friends. These stations contain thousands of our people. We must show respect." Tae-young understood respect for the dead, but he also understood tactical necessity. With respect, those people died because you're losing this war. Moving faster might help us save the ones still alive. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. When they finally reached the orbital platform, Tae-young could see why the Velthians were struggling. Their defense station was beautiful, all flowing lines and crystalline structures that caught starlight. Like a piece of art, it was also completely impractical for actual fighting. "Where are your weapon hardpoints?" Bio-Ra asked as they docked. "Weapon hardpoints?" The Velthian officer Kethver looked confused. "Our defensive arrays are integrated into the station's harmony matrix. We cannot have ugly weapons disrupting the aesthetic balance. Ba'ora stared at him. You built your space stations to look pretty instead of to fight? Beauty brings peace to the mind. A peaceful mind makes better decisions in battle. Taeyong and Ba'ora exchanged looks. This explained a lot about why the Velthians were losing. Dr. Hyjin was already hard at work in the station's medical bay, examining Ravager specimens that the Velthians had recovered from damaged enemy ships. What she found made her blood run cold. Captain Minsu, you need to see this. She called over the communication link. The specimens were unlike anything in Earth's databases. They looked like a cross between insects and machines, with organic tissue wrapped around mechanical components. But the truly terrifying part was how they were connected. Each individual Ravager is part of a larger network, Dr. Hyjin explained to the gathered officers. They share information instantly across their entire fleet. Every time we hurt one, they all learn how to defend against that attack. Veltar nodded sadly. This is why our weapons become less effective with each battle. They adapt faster than we can develop new tactics. It gets worse, Dr. Hyjin continued. Look at this tissue sample. The cellular structure can reorganize itself within hours. Physical damage that should be permanent heals completely in less than a day. Major Kyung-ho studied the data with growing concern. As the senior military advisor on the mission, he was trying to understand how an entire galactic civilization could be failing against this enemy. Show me your battle records, he told Veltar. What he saw made him angry. The Velthians fought like they were participating in a formal duel. They announced their attacks, gave enemies time to respond, and actually stopped shooting when enemy ships signaled surrender. You let them surrender? Kyung-ho asked in disbelief. Of course. The Galactic Warfare Conventions clearly state that they're not surrendering. Kyung-ho interrupted. Look at your own data. Every ship that surrendered rejoined the battle within hours, completely repaired and immune to whatever weapons you used on it. Veltar looked uncomfortable. But the conventions require us to accept surrender. To do otherwise would be barbaric. You're facing extinction because you're too polite to kill your enemies properly. The meeting was interrupted by alarms. Through the station's windows, they could see the space around the planet lighting up with weapons fire. The Ravager scouts had arrived early. All ships to battle stations, Veltar commanded. Defensive pattern 7. Remember to target only military vessels and avoid civilian areas. Kyung-ho watched in horror as the Velthian fleet spread out in a beautiful formation that completely ignored basic tactical principles. They were spacing themselves evenly, making sure every ship had a clear field of fire, and positioning themselves to protect the planet's cities. They're making themselves easy targets, Ba'ora observed, and they're giving the enemy multiple objectives to choose from. The Ravager scout ships came in fast and low, deliberately flying over populated areas. The Velthians held their fire, unwilling to risk civilian casualties. The enemy ships took advantage of this hesitation to land troops on the planet's surface. Sir, Taeyong called to Captain Minsu, request permission to engage. Minsu looked at the tactical display. 12 Ravager ships against over 100 Velthian vessels. By any reasonable measure, this should be an easy victory for the defenders. But the Ravagers were already on the planet's surface, and the Velthians were still debating whether it was ethical to fire near populated areas. Permission granted. Show them how we do it. The UES Incheon broke from the Velthian formation and dove toward the planet. Its smaller size let it move faster than the elegant alien ships. More importantly, it had no hesitation about fighting dirty. Target the lead Ravager ship, Minsu ordered. Full spread, all weapons. The Incheon opened fire with everything it had. Railgun rounds, guided missiles, and particle beams all struck the Ravager ship simultaneously. The alien vessel, which had been adapting to the Velthians' predictable energy weapons, was completely unprepared for the variety of different attack types. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Target destroyed, reported the weapons officer, moving to the next one. The second Ravager ship tried to adapt to the railgun rounds by hardening its hull. The engine switched to missiles. When the ship adapted to missiles by developing point defense systems, the human ship used particle beams to overload those defenses, then went back to railguns. They can't adapt if they don't know what's coming next, Kyung-ho explained to the watching Velthians, but the real shock came when a damaged Ravager ship tried to signal surrender. Instead of accepting, the engine fired again, completely destroying the vessel. Why did you do that? Veltar demanded over the communication channel. They were surrendering. No, they weren't, Dr. Hyjin replied coldly. I've been monitoring their biosignals. That ship was transmitting everything it learned about our weapons to the rest of the fleet. Letting it live would have made every other Ravager immune to our attacks. The silence from the Velthian ships was deafening. Within 30 minutes, all 12 Ravager scout ships were destroyed. The engine had taken minor damage but remained fully operational. The Velthian fleet was intact but had contributed almost nothing to the battle. How? Veltar asked quietly. How did one primitive ship do what our entire fleet could not? Sergeant Jae-wook answered from the surface, where he was leading a team to hunt down the Ravager troops that had landed. Because we're not trying to fight a fair fight, we're trying to win. His team had already eliminated 2 Ravager ground units using tactics that made the Velthians very uncomfortable. Booby traps, ambush attacks, and targeting the enemy's communication nodes to disrupt their hive mind connection. This is not honorable combat, protested the Velthian ground commander. Honor doesn't matter if you're dead, Jae-wook replied. Your people are facing extinction. Maybe it's time to stop worrying about fighting fair and start worrying about fighting smart. Dr. Hyjin was already working on her next project. The Ravager specimens she had collected were giving her ideas. If the enemy could adapt their biology, maybe humans could create weapons that adapted even faster. Captain, she called to Minsu, I'm going to need access to our biological warfare protocols. Veltar overheard the request. Biological warfare? That's illegal under 17 different galactic treaties. We never signed your treaties, Minsu replied calmly. And your treaties are getting your people killed? As the human team worked, the Velthians began to realize they had made a terrible mistake. They had called for help from what they thought was a primitive species. But these humans fought with a ruthless efficiency that terrified even their allies. The question now was whether their saviors might be more dangerous than their enemies. The ground shook as another wave of Ravager drop pods crashed into the Velthian capital city. From the command center, Colonel Subin watched the invasion unfold on dozens of screens. The alien attackers were spreading through the city like a disease, consuming everything in their path. Estimated enemy strength? She asked her tactical officer. Over 10,000 hostiles, ma'am. They're hitting 12 different districts simultaneously. Veltar stood beside the human colonel, his blue skin pale with fear. This is the largest ground assault we've ever faced. Our people they don't know how to fight like this. Subin nodded. She had spent the last 2 days studying Velthian military doctrine. It was impressive in its complete uselessness. Their soldiers were trained to fight in open areas with clear lines of sight. They gave warnings before attacking. They avoided damage to civilian property. They were about to be slaughtered. With your permission, I'm implementing Defensive Protocol 7, Subin said. What does that involve? Veltar asked nervously. We call it Tuesday. Sergeant Bio-Ra crouched in the ruins of what used to be a shopping center, watching a group of Ravagers search the building below. The insect-like aliens moved in perfect coordination, their hive mind allowing them to sweep the area with mechanical efficiency. They had no idea. They were walking into a trap. Ba-R activated the charges she had placed throughout the building. The explosion brought down 3 floors of concrete and steel onto the Ravagers below. Those that survived found themselves trapped in a maze of rubble and twisted metal. Alpha Team, this is Bio-Ra, package delivered. Moving to next position. Her earpiece crackled with responses from other human soldiers throughout the city. Each team was using different tactics. Some set up crossfire positions. Others used the city's sewer system to attack from below. and a few were leading Ravagers into areas where they could be trapped and eliminated. The Velthian soldiers tried to help, but they moved too slowly and talked too much. Every time they encountered the enemy, they announced themselves and demanded surrender. The Ravagers simply adapted to their tactics and killed them. Your people need to stop trying to arrest the enemy, Beora told a Velthian squad leader over the radio. These things are here to eat your planet. Show them the same mercy they'd show your children. Dr. Hyjin worked frantically in her mobile laboratory, surrounded by captured Ravager technology and biological samples. What she was building would have been illegal on any civilized world. The Velthians didn't need to know that. How's it coming? Asked Technician Wu Jin, who was helping her assemble the weapon. Almost ready? The virus is designed to attack their neural network connections. It won't kill them, but it will break their hive mind link and cause severe disorientation. That's it? Just disorientation? Dr. Hyjin smiled coldly. The disorientation lasts about 15 minutes. More than enough time for our soldiers to finish the job. She loaded the virus into aerosol canisters and sent them to the human teams throughout the city. Within an hour, reports were coming in of Ravager units suddenly stumbling around like they were drunk, completely unable to coordinate their attacks. Captain Dongsik studied the tactical map in his command vehicle. The Ravager main force was gathering in the mountains north of the city, probably planning their next assault. The location was perfect for defense, high ground, multiple escape routes, and natural barriers. It was also perfect for what he had in mind. Sir, we could try to drive them out with artillery, suggested his aide. No point. They'd just adapt to our weapons and come back stronger. Dongsik pointed to a series of marked positions on the map. We're going to bring the mountain down. On them, sir? Antimatter charges. Placed here, here, and here. He marked the structural weak points his engineers had identified. We collapsed the entire north face. Bury them under a few million tons of rock. The aide looked horrified. Sir, that will completely destroy the mountain. The environmental damage will be massive. The environment will recover. The people of this planet won't if we let those things regroup for another attack. Veltar entered the command vehicle just in time to hear the plan. You cannot be serious. That mountain is a protected natural landmark. It's been standing for millions of years. It's going to be standing for about 6 more hours, Dongsik replied. Unless you have a better idea for stopping 10,000 Ravagers from eating your capital city, we could negotiate. Perhaps offer them uninhabited worlds to consume instead. The humans in the vehicle all turned to stare at him. Dongsik spoke very slowly, as if explaining something to a child. They don't negotiate. They're a hive mind devoted to consuming everything they encounter. The only language they understand is force. But the mountain will grow back eventually. Your people won't. Major Kyung-ho led the demolition team. Up the mountain paths under cover of darkness. Each soldier carried enough explosive power to level a city block. The Ravagers had posted sentries, but they were looking for conventional attacks, not a suicide mission to destroy their entire position. Charges in position, he reported over the radio. All teams clear the blast zone. Sir, one of the soldiers asked, are we really going to blow up an entire mountain? Part of it, the pretty part that the aliens are hiding behind. The explosion lit up the night sky like a new sun. The sound could be heard from orbit. When the light faded and the dust settled, the north face of the mountain was gone. In its place was a perfectly flat cliff face and a valley filled with rubble. No Ravager signals could be detected in the area. The Velthians were silent as they watched the footage. Colonel Subin had eliminated the largest Ravager ground force in their planet's history by simply removing the geography they were standing on. This is how humans fight? Veltar asked quietly. This is how we fight when the survival of a species is at stake, Subin replied. We don't take prisoners, we don't show mercy. We don't fight fair, we fight to make sure the threat never comes back. Dr. Hyjin was already working on her next project. The biological samples she had collected were giving her ideas for weapons. That would make the mountain explosion look gentle. Captain Minsu, she called over the communication system. I need authorization to begin work on a genetic modification virus. What kind of modification? The kind that removes their ability to reproduce. If we can't kill them all today, we can at least make sure there won't be any more of them tomorrow. Veltar overheard the conversation and felt sick. You're talking about genocide. We're talking about preventing genocide, Dr. Hyjin corrected. Your genocide. They started this war. We're going to finish it. The fighting continued for another day, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Ravagers, designed to fight civilized opponents who followed rules, had no defense against humans who treated war as a problem to be solved permanently. By the time the last enemy was eliminated, the Velthians were looking at their human allies with a mixture of gratitude and terror. These small, soft creatures from a backwater world had accomplished in 3 days what the Galactic Defense Network couldn't do in 3 years. The immediate threat is neutralized, Colonel Subin reported to Veltar. But this was just their advance force. The main fleet is still coming. What do we do about that? Subin smiled, but it wasn't a comforting expression. We show them what happens when you threaten a human ally. Admiral Ji-hoon is bringing the heavy units. Veltar didn't ask what that meant. He was afraid he was about to find out. The space around Kepler 442 lit up like a festival as Admiral Ji-hoon's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Veltar watched from the orbital station as ship after ship appeared, each one larger and more threatening than the last. How many vessels is that? He asked Lieutenant Tae-young, who was monitoring the arrivals. 47 ships so far, sir, and they're still coming. What disturbed Veltar most wasn't the number of ships, but their design. Where Velthian vessels were works of art, these human warships looked like they were built for one purpose only: killing things efficiently. No elegant curves or aesthetic balance. Just armor, weapons, and the cold promise of violence. That's the Ed's soul. Captain Minsu pointed to the largest ship in the formation. Dreadnought class. She carries enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Crack a planet? Veltar's voice was barely a whisper. Why would anyone need weapons that powerful? Because sometimes you run into something that needs to be stopped permanently. Admiral Ji-hoon's weathered face appeared on the communication screen. He looked like someone who had seen too many wars and won all of them through methods he didn't like to discuss. Status report, he demanded without preamble. Local ground forces eliminated, Colonel Subin replied. Enemy scout fleet destroyed. Main Ravager fleet is approximately 6 days out. Estimated strength: over 3,000 vessels. 3,000, Ji-hoon repeated. And how many ships do our allies have left? Captain Minsu checked the latest reports. 42 operational. Velthian vessels, sir. They've lost 60% of their fleet. Understood. We'll handle this the usual way. Veltar didn't like the sound of that. Admiral, what is the usual way? Ji-hoon studied the alien commander for a long moment. You've been fighting these Ravagers for how long? The current invasion has lasted 93 days, but they've been attacking galactic civilizations for over 2 centuries. 2 centuries, Ji-hoon said slowly. And in all that time, no one thought to track them back to their source and end this permanently? End this? You mean negotiate a peace treaty? The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Every human on the communication channel was staring at Veltar like he had suggested something obscene. No, Ji-hoon said finally. I mean, find where they come from and make sure they never threaten anyone again. Commander Yeon-su was already leading deep reconnaissance missions into the outer system, using stealth ships to track the incoming Ravager fleet. What she found confirmed what the humans suspected. This wasn't just an invasion force. It was a migration. Admiral, the enemy fleet includes breeding ships, factory vessels, and what appears to be their entire civilian population, she reported. They're not just attacking this system. They're moving their entire civilization here. Population estimate? Conservative guess? 50 million Ravagers across all ship types. Dr. Hyjin was listening to the report from her laboratory. 50 million enemies that could adapt to any weapon, learn from every attack, and coordinate perfectly through their hive mind. Any conventional military would see this as an impossible challenge. Humans saw it as a target-rich environment. "Sir," she called to Admiral Ji-hoon, "I've been studying their adaptation patterns. They're designed to counter weapons and tactics they've encountered before, but they have no defense against weapons that don't exist yet." "Explain." "They adapt to energy weapons by changing their hull composition. They counter kinetic weapons by adjusting their armor." "But what if we used weapons that operate on principles they've never seen?" Ji-hoon smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Show me what you have in mind." The next few days were busy ones for the human fleet. Ships that had looked threatening before were being modified into something that defied description. Weapons that violated several laws of physics were being installed alongside devices that the Velthians couldn't even identify. "What is that?" Veltar asked, pointing to a strange array being mounted on the Sol. "Reality anchor," replied technician. Wu Jin casually. "Keeps local spacetime from getting too twisted up when we fire the main gun." "Spacetime? What kind of weapons are you people carrying? The kind that work?" Lieutenant Commander Sang-woo was tracking the Ravager fleet's approach with growing interest. The enemy ships were moving in their typical swarm formation, but something was different about their behavior. "Sir, they're changing course," he reported to Admiral Ji-hoon. "The Ravager fleet is trying to avoid our sensor probes." "They're running?" "It appears so, sir. They've detected our fleet, and they're attempting to retreat." This was unprecedented. In 2 centuries of galactic warfare, the Ravagers had never retreated from any enemy. They attacked until they won or were completely destroyed. The concept of strategic withdrawal seemed to be foreign to their nature. "They're afraid," Dr. Hyjin realized. "Their hive mind has analyzed our capabilities and determined that we're a threat." "A threat to what?" Veltar asked. "To their entire species." Admiral Ji-hoon studied the tactical display. The Ravager fleet was spreading out, trying to make multiple jumps to faster than light in different directions. They were abandoning their invasion to escape the human fleet. "Navigation, plot intercept courses for all enemy formations. We're not letting them leave." "Sir," Veltar protested, "if they're retreating, isn't that victory?" "Your mere presence has driven them away." "Driven them away to attack someone else," Major General In-ho corrected. "These things have been terrorizing the galaxy for 2 centuries. That ends today. But if they're fleeing, they're regrouping. They'll analyze what they learned about our capabilities, adapt their tactics, and come back stronger. We don't fight wars to teach lessons. We fight them to ensure they never happen again." The human fleet split into multiple task forces, each one pursuing a different group of fleeing Ravagers. What followed wasn't really a battle. It was more like a hunting expedition. The Ravagers had adapted their ships to fight energy weapons, kinetic weapons, and even the exotic matter weapons used by the most advanced galactic civilizations. They had no defense against weapons that manipulated probability, devices that attacked on a quantum level, or ammunition that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Target the breeding ships first," Admiral Ji-hoon ordered. "No prisoners, no survivors, no exceptions." Veltar watched in horror as the human fleet systematically destroyed every Ravager vessel they encountered. There were no demands for surrender, no attempts at communication, no mercy for damaged ships trying to escape. "This is slaughter," he whispered. "This is war," Colonel Subin replied. "The kind you fight when survival is at stake." Within 18 hours, the mighty Ravager fleet that had terrified the galaxy for generations was reduced to expanding clouds of debris. 50 million of the most dangerous predators in known space had been eliminated by a species they had never encountered before, but Admiral Ji-hoon wasn't finished. "Communications, send a message to Earth Command. Request full fleet mobilization. We're going to pay a visit to the Ravager homeworld." "Their homeworld?" Veltar was aghast. "But they're already defeated." Their mobile forces are defeated, but somewhere out there is the world that created these things. As long as it exists, there's a chance they could rebuild and threaten other species. You're talking about attacking their home planet. That would be a permanent solution, Johun finished, the kind that ensures this never happens again. As the human fleet prepared for its next mission, the Velthians began to understand the terrible truth about their saviors. They had called for help from what they thought was a primitive species, only to discover that humans were apex predators who viewed warfare not as a contest with rules, but as a problem to be solved through the complete elimination of the threat. The Ravagers had terrorized the galaxy for 2 centuries. In 2 days, humanity had reduced them to scattered debris and was preparing to finish what they started. The question now was, what would happen to the galaxy once these humans ran out of enemies to fight? The Ravager homeworld hung in space like a diseased tumor, its surface covered in the organic growths that served as cities for the hive mind species. Fleet Admiral Su Young studied the planet through the viewport of her flagship, the Izbizan, surrounded by the largest human fleet ever assembled. 200 ships, she said to her tactical officer. Every dreadnought, carrier, and planet killer in the Earth Defense Corps. I think we're ready. Behind her, Veltar stood with the other Velthian observers who had insisted on witnessing what they called the final atrocity. His blue skin was pale with fear and disgust at what he was about to see. "Admiral, please reconsider," he pleaded. "You've already defeated their fleet. The Ravagers are broken. Surely that's enough." "Admiral." Su Young turned to face him. Her expression was patient but cold. "How many species have the Ravagers wiped out in the last 2 centuries? The official count is 23 civilizations completely destroyed, with 23, she interrupted. Billions of people. And you want us to leave their homeworld intact so they can rebuild and do it again? But wholesale destruction of an entire world ... It's genocide." "No," said Dr. Kyung-min from her position at the science station. "Genocide is what the Ravagers do. What we're doing is pest control." The doctor had spent the journey to the Ravager homeworld working on her final project. It wasn't a weapon in any traditional sense. It was something far more elegant and permanent. "Status report on the biological modification," Admiral Su Young requested. "Ready for deployment, ma'am." The retrovirus is designed to rewrite their genetic code at the cellular level. It won't kill them, but it will remove their capacity for aggression and their ability to adapt their biology. Veltar stared at her in horror. "You're going to change what they are at the genetic level? We're going to make them harmless." Think of it as evolution in reverse. Instead of adapting to become better killers, they'll adapt to become peaceful herbivores. That's not evolution. That's forced mutation of an entire species. "Yes, Doctor," Kyung-min replied simply. "It is." Captain Huang-ki led the advanced scout force toward the planet's surface. His ships were designed for this kind of work, fast, heavily armed, and equipped with biological warfare systems that made most humans uncomfortable. "Initial scans show approximately 50 million Ravagers on the surface," he reported. "They're organizing into defensive formations, but something's wrong with their coordination." "Explain," Admiral Su Young demanded. "They're acting like individuals instead of a hive mind. Separate groups are making different tactical decisions. Some are trying to build defenses, others are attempting to evacuate, and a few are actually fighting each other." Dr. Kyung-min smiled. "The destruction of their space fleet broke the higher-level hive mind connections. They're experiencing individual consciousness for the first time in their species' history. They don't know how to handle it." The implications were staggering. The Ravagers' greatest strength had always been their perfect coordination through the hive mind. Without it, they were just very large, very dangerous insects with no idea how to work together. "Perfect," Admiral Su Young said. "Deploy the virus." Hundreds of delivery pods launched from the human fleet, each one carrying enough modified retrovirus to affect millions of Ravagers. The pods were designed to burst in the atmosphere and spread their contents across the entire planet. The Ravagers tried to shoot down the pods, but their lack of coordination made their defenses useless. Some groups fired at targets that others were ignoring. Some tried to retreat while others charged forward. In their confusion, most of the delivery pods reached their targets. "Virus deployment successful," reported the biological warfare officer. "Atmospheric saturation achieved. Estimated time for full genetic modification, 6 hours." Veltar watched the readings on his scanner with growing horror. Every Ravager on the planet was being infected with a virus that would fundamentally change what they were. In 6 hours, one of the galaxy's most dangerous predator species would become something completely different. "This is wrong," he said quietly. "You're playing God with an entire species." "We're saving the galaxy," Admiral Su-Young replied. 23 civilizations, Veltar. How many more would have died if we let them recover?" The hours passed slowly. On the planet's surface, the Ravagers were undergoing changes that went beyond anything in their evolutionary history. Their razor-sharp claws dulled and fell off. Their acidic blood became neutral. Their aggressive instincts faded away like a bad dream. Most importantly, their ability to adapt their biology to new threats simply stopped working. "Ma'am," Dr. Kyung-min reported, "the genetic modifications are taking hold faster than expected. The Ravagers are no longer showing any aggressive behavior. In fact, they seem to be developing herbivorous feeding patterns." "Herbivorous?" Veltar asked in disbelief. "They're eating plants. The most dangerous predators in the galaxy now prefer flowers to flesh." Captain Huang-Ki led the occupation force to the planet's surface to confirm the results. What they found was almost comical. Creatures that had once torn apart starships with their bare claws were now peacefully grazing in what used to be weapons. "Factories, it's complete," he reported. "The Ravagers are no longer a threat to anyone. They're not even capable of violence anymore." The genetic modifications removed their predatory instincts entirely. "Any signs of intelligence?" "They're still intelligent, but their priorities have completely changed. Instead of planning attacks, they're building gardens. Instead of breeding for war, they're creating art. It's like they've become a completely different species." "Admiral." Su-Young nodded in satisfaction. "Mission accomplished. The Ravager threat has been permanently neutralized." "Neutralized?" Veltar's voice was shaking. "You've committed genocide against their entire way of life." "Their way of life was consuming other civilizations," Admiral Su-Young pointed out. "We've given them a better one." The human fleet established permanent monitoring stations throughout former Ravager territory. Every world they had conquered was now under human protection, being slowly restored to habitability. "The question," said Admiral Ji-hoon during the final briefing, "is what happens next. The galaxy has been living in fear of the Ravagers for 2 centuries. Now that threat is gone." Veltar looked around the room at the human officers. These people had accomplished something that the entire Galactic Defense Network couldn't do. In 200 years, they had eliminated the greatest threat known space had ever faced. But as he watched them plan the occupation of former Ravager worlds, he began to understand a terrible truth. The galaxy had traded one apex predator for another. "What are your long-term plans?" he asked carefully. Admiral Su-Young smiled. "We're going to make sure this never happens again. Any species that threatens peaceful civilizations will face the same choice the Ravagers did: change or be changed. And if they refuse, then we'll find a permanent solution." The message was clear. Humanity had appointed itself the guardian of galactic peace, and they would enforce that peace through methods that made their allies almost as afraid as their enemies. As the human fleet prepared to return to Earth, Veltar realized that his people's desperate SOS call had changed the galaxy forever. They had called for help from what they thought was a primitive species. Instead, they had awakened the most dangerous predators the universe had ever known. The Ravagers were gone, reduced to harmless herbivores grazing in gardens they had built from the ruins of their war machines. But the humans remained, watching from their monitoring stations, ready to respond to any threat with the same terrifying efficiency they had shown here. The galaxy was safe. The question was whether that was really a good thing.